The golden light of the late afternoon poured into the streets of Vienna, casting a soft amber glow across the cobbled roads. Lucas Miller, a 38-year-old financial analyst, sat at his sleek mahogany desk, absent-mindedly tapping his fingers against the surface. His home office was quiet, except for the occasional creak of the old wooden floor beneath him. The room was a testament to the life he had built. Framed degrees from prestigious universities, photos of vacations with his wife, Elena, and the scent of fresh coffee brewing in the corner. Vienna had always been his sanctuary, a place where art, history, and modernity converged in a symphony of beauty. He and Elena had made their life here, a comfortable one, full of laughter, travel, and mutual dreams. She was an art curator, her 36-year-old self constantly moving between cities for exhibitions and gallery openings. Their marriage, now 8 years strong, had always felt stable. They had weathered the storms of early careers, infertility struggles, and the quiet battles of long-term relationships. Or so he thought. For months now, an unsettling feeling had gnawed at the back of his mind. Elena, once full of animated stories about her work and the artists she admired, had become distant. Her phone had become a permanent fixture in her hand, her gaze often slipping to it mid-conversation. Lucas tried not to read too much into it. He reminded himself that they were both busy. They were getting older, and the honeymoon phase couldn't last forever, right? Still, there were signs. She had grown secretive about her trips. Casual mentions of just another gallery in Paris or a quick visit to Berlin seemed more frequent than usual. Lucas noticed the subtle shifts, the slightly hurried goodbyes before work trips, the lack of intimacy when she returned. It was unlike Elena to be emotionally distant. They had always been open with each other, talking through whatever struggles or stresses they faced. But now something was different. It was a quiet Friday evening when Lucas finally saw what had been hidden from him all these months. As he went through his emails, deleting spam, and reviewing some work-related documents, a message appeared in his inbox. The subject line read, "For your eyes only." Lucas felt a strange tension settle over him as he opened the email. It contained no text, just a few attachments, photos. His breath hitched in his throat as he clicked on the first one. It was Elena, his wife, smiling coyly in a hotel room. A room he knew all too well. It was the same boutique hotel they had stayed in during their honeymoon in Paris. The plush, cream-colored duvet, the abstract painting above the headboard. It was unmistakable. But what shook him to his core was the man beside her. He was young, perhaps in his early 30s, with dark hair and a chiseled jawline. In the next picture, Elena was kissing him. The man's hands were wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer as they lay on the bed. Lucas stared at the images in disbelief. His hands trembled as he scrolled through the rest of the pictures, each one more damning than the last. Elena, the woman he had loved, trusted, and built his life with, was in bed with another man. And this wasn't some fleeting moment of indiscretion. The way they looked at each other, the intimacy in their touches, it spoke of a deeper connection, a secret life that Elena had kept from him. He sat there for what felt like hours, his heart pounding in his chest. His world was crumbling around him, and yet everything remained painfully still. How could she do this? Why hadn't he seen it coming? The clock on the wall ticked louder with every passing second, echoing the emptiness he felt inside. Lucas's mind raced with questions, each more painful than the last. How long had this been going on? Was it just one affair, or had there been others? And most importantly, what was he supposed to do now? Elena came home that night, oblivious to the storm waiting for her. The sound of the front door clicking shut echoed through their large apartment. Lucas remained in his office, his eyes fixed on the photos. He heard her footsteps, the soft hum of her voice as she greeted him from the hallway. "Lucas, are you still working?" Elena called, her voice cheerful. He didn't respond immediately. His throat was dry, and his heart felt as if it had been ripped from his chest. How could she sound so normal, so unburdened by the betrayal she had been living? Moments later, Elena appeared in the doorway. Her smile faltered as she noticed the stern expression on Lucas's face. His hand clutched his phone, still displaying the email. "Lucas, is everything okay?" she asked, a hint of concern creeping into her voice. Without a word, Lucas handed her his phone. Elena's face went pale as she stared at the screen. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, he saw real fear in them. "Elena," Lucas's voice was strained, barely above a whisper. "What is this?" She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, tears welled up in her eyes, and she shook her head, her lips quivering. "Lucas, I can explain," she stammered, her voice cracking. "Explain?" Lucas's voice rose, filled with anguish and disbelief. "How do you explain this?" He gestured toward the photos. "How long, Elena? How long have you been lying to me?" Elena's tears spilled over, and she covered her face with her hands, unable to meet his gaze. "It was a mistake," she sobbed. "I never meant for it to happen. Damien, it just happened. I didn't." "Damien." Lucas spat the name out like venom. "Is that his name? How long, Elena?" "6 months," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's been going on for 6 months." Lucas felt as though the air had been sucked out of the room. 6 months. Half a year of lies, deceit, and betrayal. He had spent that time believing they were still building a future together, while she had been living a double life. "Why?" he asked, his voice broken. "Was I not enough for you?" Elena shook her head, her sobs coming harder now. "No, it's not like that. It wasn't about you, Lucas. I was lost, confused. I didn't know how to handle everything. Work, the pressure, our problems. Our problems," Lucas interrupted, his anger flaring. "What problems, Elena? I thought we were happy. I thought we were working through everything together." "I don't know," Elena sobbed. "I don't know why I did it. I was selfish, and I didn't think about how it would hurt you. I'm so sorry, Lucas. Please, you have to believe me." Lucas stood, his hands shaking with rage and sorrow. He couldn't bear to look at her, the woman he had shared his life with, who had promised him forever, had shattered every ounce of trust between them. "I don't know if I can believe you anymore," he said quietly, his voice trembling. "I don't even know who you are." Elena reached out to him, desperate, her tear-streaked face pleading for forgiveness. "Please, Lucas, we can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes. Just don't leave me, please." Lucas stepped back, his eyes filled with pain. "I need time," he said, his voice hoarse. "I need time to think." With that, Lucas walked out of the room, leaving Elena behind, her sobs echoing through the apartment. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew he couldn't stay, not right now. The weight of her betrayal was too much to bear. He wandered the streets of Vienna, the night air cold against his skin. The city, once his sanctuary, now felt foreign and empty. He passed by the cafes and parks they used to frequent together, each one a painful reminder of what they had lost. How had it come to this? How had he been so blind? As the hours passed, Lucas found himself sitting on a bench by the Danube River, staring out at the water. His mind raced with conflicting emotions: anger, sadness, confusion. He had loved Elena with every fiber of his being, but now he wasn't sure if that love was enough to repair the damage. Could he ever forgive her? Could he ever trust her again? The questions weighed heavily on him, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find the answers. Love, he realized, was not always enough to hold a relationship together. It required trust, honesty, and loyalty, things that had been broken beyond repair. But as the sun began to rise over the city, Lucas made a decision. He would confront Elena one last time, but this time he would be honest with himself about what he truly wanted. He couldn't change the past, but he could decide his future. A week later, Elena sat across from Lucas in a small cafe near their apartment. her eyes swollen from days of crying. Her hands trembled as she clutched a steaming cup of coffee, avoiding Lucas's gaze. The cafe was quiet, with only a few early morning patrons scattered around. The soft murmur of conversation filled the air, but the tension between them was palpable. Lucas sat across from her, his face impassive, but his mind was a whirlwind of emotions. The week apart had given him time to reflect, to sift through the debris of their relationship. He hadn't come to any easy conclusions, but he knew one thing for certain: the trust between them was shattered, and no matter how much time passed, it wouldn't be easy to rebuild. Elena finally broke the silence. "I'm so sorry, Lucas," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft clatter of plates. "I've thought about what I did every single day. I wish I could take it all back. I wish I could undo everything." Lucas stared at her for a moment, his blue eyes cold, searching her face for some sign of the woman he had once known. She looked so fragile now, her once bright aura dulled by guilt and sorrow. But underneath it all, he still saw the Elena he had fallen in love with, the woman who used to dance barefoot in their living room, who loved art so passionately that she could make him see beauty. The woman who used to dance barefoot in their living room, who loved art so passionately that she could make him see beauty in even the simplest things. But that woman had betrayed him in the worst way. "I've had a lot of time to think," Lucas began, his voice steady but firm. "And I've been asking myself one question over and over. Why? Why did you do it, Elena? I need to understand. Was it something I did? Was it something missing in our relationship?" Elena wiped her eyes, her hands trembling as she set down the cup. "No, it wasn't you, Lucas. It was never you. I don't know how to explain it without sounding like I'm making excuses, but I was lost. We were going through a rough patch, and I started feeling like I wasn't enough, like I was losing myself in the marriage. When I met Damien during that work trip, it wasn't love or even lust. It was an escape, a distraction from everything I was feeling." 6 months, Elena, Lucas said bitterly, leaning forward. 6 months is more than a mistake. You don't make a mistake for half a year. "I know," she whispered. "I know that. And I hate myself for it every single day. Damien meant nothing to me, but I let him into my life because I was too afraid to face what was happening between us. I was selfish, and I betrayed you." Lucas took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words press down on him. "I gave you everything," he said softly, his voice breaking. "I trusted you. You were the person I thought I could rely on no matter what. And now, I don't know how to look at you without seeing those pictures in my mind." Elena flinched, her tears falling freely now. "I know I can't take back what I did, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want to make things right, Lucas. I don't want to lose you." Lucas sat back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Elena. And even if I could, I don't know if I can trust you again. Trust is the foundation of everything we had, and you destroyed it." Elena's face crumpled, and she sobbed quietly into her hands. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, I know that, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this, if you'll let me." Lucas remained silent, watching her crumble under the weight of her guilt. He wanted to feel compassion, to offer some kind of comfort, but the anger and hurt inside him were too overwhelming. He had spent years building a life with Elena, and now all of it felt like a lie. "I loved you, Elena," Lucas said finally, his voice soft but filled with sadness. "And maybe a part of me still does. But love isn't enough to fix this. I need time, and I need space. I can't just pretend like everything will go back to the way it was." Elena nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "I understand. I'll give you as much time as you need. Just don't shut me out completely, please." Lucas stood up, reaching for his coat. He felt exhausted, emotionally drained, as if he had just fought a battle and lost. "I don't know what the future holds, Elena, but right now, I need to figure things out on my own." Without another word, Lucas walked out of the cafe, leaving Elena behind, The cold morning air hit his face as he stepped onto the street, the weight of the conversation pressing heavily on his chest. He had made his decision. For now, at least, he couldn't stay in a relationship where trust had been so completely destroyed. As he walked through the quiet streets of Vienna, Lucas felt a strange sense of relief wash over him. He didn't know what his next steps would be, but he knew he had taken the first one. He had chosen himself. He had chosen to heal, even if that meant walking away from the woman he had once loved with all his heart. 6 months later, the city had shifted from winter's icy grip to the warmth of spring. Lucas sat on a park bench near the Danube River, the soft sound of the water flowing peacefully behind him. It had been 6 months since that fateful night when he had discovered Elena's betrayal. 6 months of soul-searching, of healing, of trying to find some sense of closure. He had spent the early weeks in a haze, grappling with the overwhelming emotions of anger, betrayal, and grief. He had rented a small apartment on the other side of the city, away from the memories that clung to their shared home. He kept his distance from Elena, answering only a few of her messages and calls, needing the space to breathe, to think. In those months, Lucas found himself gravitating towards his old passions, things he had set aside during the busyness of his marriage. He spent more time at art galleries, immersed in the quiet beauty of paintings and sculptures that had always brought him peace. He started hiking again, reconnecting with nature, and finding solace in the mountains that framed the outskirts of Vienna. But even in the midst of his healing, Elena's absence was a constant shadow. He couldn't deny that he still thought about her, wondered if she was okay. He knew she was seeing a therapist, trying to make sense of her own actions. But Lucas had made no promises about their future. He was still searching for answers within himself. One afternoon, while walking along the Danube, Lucas received a message from Elena. It was short and simple. "Can we meet?" He hesitated, unsure if he was ready to see her again. But something inside him, perhaps a lingering need for closure, urged him to agree. He replied with a time and place, and a few days later, they met once again in the same cafe where they had last spoken. Elena looked different now, older, perhaps more worn from the emotional toll of the past months. But there was also something softer about her, as if she had come to terms with her mistakes. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history hanging between them. "I didn't know if you'd agree to meet," Elena said softly, her fingers tracing the edge of her cup. Lucas shrugged, his voice calm. "I wasn't sure either." She looked down, gathering her thoughts before speaking again. "I've been seeing a therapist. I've been trying to understand why I did what I did, why I hurt you the way I did. I know I can't undo the past, but I've been working on myself." Lucas nodded. "I'm glad you're taking steps to heal, but I've also been doing my own healing, and I've come to realize that I need to focus on myself too." Elena's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but she nodded in understanding. "I know. I don't expect anything from you, Lucas. I just wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. Truly sorry." For the first time in months, Lucas felt a sense of closure. He had been holding on to his anger for so long. But now, sitting across from Elena, he realized that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant letting go of the pain and choosing to move forward, whether that was together or apart. "I forgive you, Elena," Lucas said quietly, his voice steady. "But that doesn't mean we can go back to what we had. Too much has changed." Elena nodded, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "I understand. I'll always be grateful for the time we had together." With that, they sat in silence. The weight of their shared history finally lifted. They would part ways, both of them forever changed by what had happened, but perhaps better for it.